all our viewers while we're fumbling around there on TikTok. But all right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Civil War Seattle. My name is Rich, and I'll be hosting tonight's conversation with Dan Casella, who is this icon that you can see on the right. We have a little issue with his camera on his computer, so we're going to try and see if we can work through that as we go here. But it's not really necessary. You guys can kind of get the point as we go here. We do have an image that we'll pull up that we'll be talking about most of the time as we go through tonight. And we're streaming on several different platforms. So we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. If you're watching on any of those, you can leave comments and questions and things as we're going through, and we'll try and answer them live. And we're also on TikTok doing the same thing. So we're trying to kind of multitask here through a couple different platforms. So let's start with Dan. For anybody who's familiar with this channel, you've probably seen Dan on some other things in the past. Although if you're watching on TikTok, you won't actually see him tonight, but you'll hear him. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what you're interested in, why New Jersey, because that's what we're going to talk about tonight mostly, is New Jersey and the Civil War.
Well, to answer your question, why New Jersey, it's simply because it's the greatest state in the Union. And secondly, it's where I'm from. It's where I was born and raised. I run a historical society in the town that I live in here in Cedarville, New Jersey. It's a little town in Cumberland County, quiet little Bay Area town that was once very prosperous from the sturgeon and oyster fishing industries that were down here that are now gone. I've just always been into the Civil War, whether it's through just learning about it, a long-time reenactor. And then when I moved down here, I kind of realized this was a special little place when I noticed all of the homes were really old. And the house that I bought, or the house I moved, the house I bought, I found on a map 1870s, and it was the name, the first owner of the home, their name was Ogden, which you'll see, which are one of the guys named, actually two of the guys named in the photograph above. So I got involved with the Historical Society, mostly because I moved almost across the street from them. And I got involved there and established, I don't want to say a relationship with them, but some sort of, standing. And then, was it January 2020? They had a meeting and I got nominated to be the president and they voted me in. And ever since then, I've had the keys to the place. And every time I go into the building, it's a new adventure, a new find, a new article. It's a wild ride. And to find this photograph above, and I have a letter written by by one of the guys. I have a newspaper, another letter that was printed in a newspaper article by another guy. It's wild to see that all this stuff, just digging it out, and
Sure,
it's just a cool story.
Yeah, I can relate with my work with local historical societies and so on. It's never ending. You're always coming across a new letter, a new account, a new thing that maybe people who aren't Civil War focused haven't seen in these things or haven't appreciated that way. So let's talk. The reason we're having you on tonight, and the reason this picture is up here, and for those who are watching on Facebook or YouTube, we're actually on TikTok as well. So when I'm pointing and stuff like this, it's because I have an image, a green screen behind me, showing the photo that is on this side of the screen for you guys watching on that platform. But this photo led to your recent article that was published in Civil War Times magazine. Which is a darn cool thing. So that's, obviously, kind of while we're talking about this tonight, the magazine is currently on the newsstands, finally. I think we were looking for it for about the past 4 weeks, and it's finally out. So that's why we want to talk about it tonight, so you guys can hear it, you can watch this, and then you can go pick it up for yourself and maybe run into Dan in Gettysburg sometime and get it autographed. whatever. So before we get into the individual stories of the veterans and who they were, what they did during the war, some accounts that you can, first person accounts that you can read for us from them. Tell us where you originally found this photo, and then from there, kind of how your journey in exploring this image, these histories, and how you got to the point where you wrote this article and had it published, focusing on this image.
So the image was shown to me by a friend of mine, and it was just like, hey, you moved to this area. Here's this. I don't know how we came across the website, but it was just a photo, the photo of these guys and the description below. And he said, oh, it's a page from a book, and the book was online. So I went online, archive.org.
Okay.
Has this page for page. And yeah, it was just like, oh, wow, like Ferriton, like that's right up the road. And from there, I went to Find a Grave, the website that has, all the cemeteries in like the world, basically. And went through there, started looking through the local one, and immediately found the guy with the beard, the guy with the goatee, Joseph Burt. And
he's this guy here.
He's the guy with the goatee.
Okay.
And then there's Elmer Ogden sitting dead center. And then Benjamin Ogden, who's the guy standing with the big goatee. All of them have headstones in the church steeple I can see from my front porch. So it was just like, okay, wow, this just got really personal. And then I was able to locate the graves of the other two guys, Lorenzo Painter and Joseph Diver. And so then there was that. And then I was like, okay, this is cool.
And this is
good.
I was going to say, for people watching on Facebook, I blew it up so you can actually see the text at the bottom. Here on TikTok with the green screen, you can't see behind me, but these are members of the 7th New Jersey, Company H in particular. So I don't think we mentioned that yet. These guys are, when we found them on Find a Grave, which Find a Grave, if you're into history and genealogy, is an amazing resource. And I always got to give a shout out to the people that voluntarily give hundreds of hours to uploading all of those individual memorials on Find a Grave, because it's not automated. It's individual people that's their passion, is going into the cemeteries and putting these records together and then posting them. And then people like you and I benefit from that, because we can be in the cemetery on our phone and get some data on who these guys are. So it's a tremendous tool. And it's really something I know folks like us lean on a lot, and I'm really thankful for the people that have put an ungodly amount of time into doing those things. But it gives us results, you can be in the cemetery and like, man, this guy was born in 1847. Who's that? And there's a good chance he's going to be on there, and then we can do our storytelling and our interpretive work from that. So it's really nice to have that sort of that base to stand on. Getting back, I think I kind of cut you off there for a little bit, but so we've got the 5 of them, and you realize like, wow, I'm in the middle of these guys, like in my town. I can see the church steeple, like you said, from your house.
I can see where these guys are, where they rest today. And it's even cooler is that this small little town, like their living ancestors are right here. So I've come in contact with a lot of them through Facebook, and you can still see the name. The name Burt is all over the place, in the cemeteries. The name Ogden is all over the place in this town. The only other name that's bigger than Ogden is Bateman, which they're in this group of 5. There was a 6th friend, and he's not in this picture. His name is Albert Bateman, and like I said, the Bateman family is huge down here in Cedarville.
So all 5 of these guys survived, right?
No.
So they didn't. So they're not all survivors of the war. Oh, okay. All right. Well, that'll be good. I can't wait to get into that side of it.
It's like, wow.
Okay. So
good.
No, I was just going to say, I was going to restart because I cut you off again.
All right.
So you're realizing like, wow, I'm right in the middle of these guys. My friend shared this image with me. What do you feel like at that point? How, like, are you excited, or are you just like, what's?
It's unreal because it's like, you know, I can walk to the grave and like see the picture of this guy and be like, here he is, like this is it, you know. And that's something you never get to do, because anytime you read about, you know, any battle or even any regiment, you never see like the faces of the average guy. Usually,
Yeah,
histories are written, you know, it highlights, you know, Lieutenant so and so, or you know,
yeah,
Captain Hoopty Poop. Never the guys in the ranks. These
yeah,
guys document themselves, and I've just been able to piece by piece uncover their story from almost the start to I haven't been able to find anything since after Joseph Burt's death, anything of their communication back and forth from home, or back and forth
Mhm.
from army to home.
Okay.
Who knows where that lays? Because there's all these newspaper articles that I have that are the communications with these guys in the one letter, the one physical letter. So it's just, you know, it's an ever growing thing.
Yeah. So let's talk for just a sec. A little background on the 7th New Jersey.
Sure.
When were they mustered in? How long did they serve? Where in the war generally were they? And then after we paint a broad picture for us, and then we can go back and talk specifically about these guys' experience from there.
Sure. So the 7th New Jersey is raised out of, it's raised all over the state. It's a part of the 2nd New Jersey Brigade, which was the 1st New Jersey Brigade, which was originally raised by my man Phil Kearney. And then, of course, like I said, you have the 2nd New Jersey Brigade. These guys are, Company H in particular, will be from Cumberland County and Gloucester County, which is just to the north of us.
Mhm.
They're going to be one of like the pearl regiments of the state. When you go through, like, you know, the highlight regiments of New Jersey, there's the 3rd, the 7th, the 12th, the 15th, and, you know, I don't know, we'll say the 24th and whatever else. But like the 7th New Jersey, they have a fantastic regimental history written about them by a guy by the name of John Hayward. And he writes in great detail about the Battle of Williamsburg and about the Battle of Gettysburg, Chancellorsville, which is their finest hour. And yeah, it's a great read. But what really is my little rabbit hole that I love to fall into is the Battle of Williamsburg and that campaign.
Yeah.
It's the first one, and it's completely blown over. And it seems like everything I find and read about it is, you know, it's never been found before, never been noticed before.
Yeah.
Which Williamsburg is going to be this group's first brutal awakening to what war is and what it's going to be. The 2nd New Jersey Brigade is going to go into Williamsburg in the pouring rain. They had marched all night in the mud. And then the 7th is going to be ordered to drop their knapsacks, just like the rest of the 2nd New Jersey Brigade.
Yeah.
They're going to be ordered to drop their knapsacks, and they go in, and that's where they're going to lose, sitting dead center, kind of hidden by the bill of your hat on TikTok, is Elmer Ogden. He's 22 years old. By the account that I have, he is struck in the forehead with a knee ball, and he's standing in the front rank next to all of these men. And when they eventually are able to recover his body or find him again on the battlefield, Benjamin Ogden, the man standing above him with the big old beard, says that the Rebs took everything of value off of him except his mittens, which we sent home to his mother. So maybe somewhere in Cedarville, this guy's mittens are, you know, still in an attic or still in a box somewhere.
And this is, for anyone unfamiliar, this Williamsburg we're talking about is a battle that's part of the Peninsula Campaign in June of 1862. It's
May 1862.
Oh, May. Yeah, sorry. Well, May 1862, and it's certainly an underappreciated campaign in the war. It's understudied, underwritten about, and then even among the battles of the Peninsula Campaign, Williamsburg, even among those, is underrepresented and underwritten about. So it's nice to get a little personal thing where you can, like you said, you can see this fellow here. He caught a Confederate bullet with his face.
Unfortunately.
And Yeah, and this was a time in the war that's just it's just passed over. I mean, everything is subjugated by Gettysburg as far as interest in the Civil War. So the Peninsula Campaign suffers from that, but these are soldiers that in that point in the war is their first exposure to combat. Like you said, it's that this aspect of the war is just as real to these five guys in that moment as anything they had done at Gettysburg or Petersburg or Appomattox or anywhere else they were at during the war. To them, it was battle. It was fighting, and I think we forget that in the people that died in these early campaigns and battles. Guys that died at Cedar Mountain in August of 1862.
Mm-hmm.
There are thousands of casualties of all these campaigns that are, it's until Antietam. They're all very, very easily forgotten about. So to see the individual, like I said here, that is one of those gung-ho early war volunteers. That was there because he wanted to be. Yes. And some of the war's best soldiers all died in the beginning. And it's easy to forget that. And a guy like this is certainly one of them. So he loses in May of 1862. Now the other four, how do they ship Ogden? Elmer Ogden is the one that
killed, and
so his mittens go home.
Was that
his mittens make it home?
His mittens make it home. The gentleman above him with the beard, who is his first cousin, and then the other gentleman to his side with the other goatee, Joseph Burt. They're gonna Benjamin Ogden is gonna name Burt in his letter when they find and bury Elmer Ogden on the battlefield. It is unclear. I have not been able to find anything that says that Elmer Ogden was ever returned home. So somewhere on the 200 plus acres that the American Battlefield Trust just secured this year are the possible remains of Elmer Ogden, somewhere on the battlefield, somewhere near the Bloody Ravine where the 2nd New Jersey Brigade would fight. And oddly enough, the first fight of the 2nd New Jersey Brigade will be its worst of the entire war. Worse than Chancellorsville, worse than Gettysburg, worse than Spotsylvania, worse than the Wilderness. The 4 regiments of the entire of the 2nd New Jersey Brigade are going to lose more men in Williamsburg than they will at any other fight.
Well, and it's probably the least appreciated of all of it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and do you find when you are reading about these guys, do they, in the regimental history, do they give that first battle that much attention as well, or even in their memory, is this one less a focus than later more famous battles?
It's less a focus because the first one, you and I are Philadelphia Eagles fans, so you know the torment of going through a game and then like, oh, here's a victory, even though you screwed up the whole day and you shouldn't win. Here's the victory. That's what kind of happens. And they're like, oh, that was really bad. We have to keep moving, and they just kind of forget about it. It was kind of like it was a pregame battle. But what's interesting is when you study the fight, especially on Union and the Southern ends, minus Phil Kearny, all of the major players in Williamsburg go on to be bigger players later in the war. You have William Scott Hancock. You have George Armstrong Custer is there. You're going to, and especially on the Confederate side, you're going to have James Longstreet, Jubal Early, Cadamus Wilcox, Roger Pryor, who is buried in the state of New Jersey. One of 2 Confederate generals buried in the state of New Jersey. Who else? George Pickett's going to be there. And, there's one more that's skipping my mind. But this is very much a pregame fight to the rest of the war. And it kind of gives McClellan a false sense of, I don't want to say a false sense of like, oh, this is going to be easy, because it's not. But I think it gives him a false sense of, it reinforces that like, oh, they have 100,000 and this is going to be like this the whole way. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of, I don't know, kind of right, kind of wrong. I have a whole theory on McClellan. Not crazy negative, but that's for another topic. Yeah, like I said, it's that pregame, like, oh shit, we kind of won. Let's just move on. Let's get to the next one. And by the time they hit Chancellorsville, they are a veteran regiment who are not afraid to, not afraid to get into the thick of it, and willing to get up close and dirty with the Rebs. And yeah, they become one of the staple regiments in the 2nd New Jersey Brigade. Yeah, up until when they muster out in 64.
When you mentioned that there was a letter written home that mentions Elmer Ogden, is that is that something that you have in the collection there, or is that something that was in a newspaper, or
I have it right here with me?
Perhaps you can show us and read it. Unfortunately, for those watching on TikTok or YouTube, the camera is out, so you're not going to be able to see this as he holds it up, but he'll read it for us. Those watching on TikTok, you're lucky. You picked the right platform tonight. Right. So Dan's going to get that letter. And this is really the enjoyable part of research to me is these kind of things, finding individual letters, finding unique documents that are connected to those individuals. Because with what I do with the Seattle veterans, it's I'm not studying campaigns and in battles as much as I'm studying individuals, much like Dan is with this story. Yeah. So these things are much more impactful to us in our historical research than perhaps if you were accumulating accounts to write a whole story of the battle or the campaign. So to find what Dan's going to read here is it's rare and it's really exciting.
So this article is literally titled "The Death of Elmer B. Ogden." It reads as follows as I go through my whatever. Yes, it is. It is worth sorrow that we record the death of Private Elmer B. Ogden, son of David S. Ogden, Cedarville, member of Company H, 7th New Jersey Volunteers, who was killed at the Battle of Williamsburg, Virginia. This estimable young man volunteered last year in the case of his country, along with a number of his bosom friends from his native town. He was not only exemplary in habits of life, but a sincere Christian, being a strict member of the Methodist Church. He has fought his last battle, but it is a consolation to know that he fell in a great and glorious cause. Whilst in the act of firing, his forehead was pierced with a bullet, causing immediate death. He was buried by his companions in arms on the battlefield, and a headboard marks his resting place. In due time, we hope he will be removed and brought home to his relatives and friends. And there's a note here written in pen. Someone wrote "Buried Presbyterian Church," and now that's not entirely true. I've looked through the records myself, and there's no E. Ogden in that grave. Mr. Ogden, his father, has another son in the Union Army who belongs to General Halleck's department. He has become quite a veteran in his service, having fought at Fredericktown, Missouri, Fort Donelson, Tennessee, and the Great Battle of Pittsburgh Landing. He is now confronting the enemy and will be, in all probability, in the great fight at Corinth. The truest evidence we have of the devotion of our country is the individual sacrifices we make.
Wow. That's interesting to me because it's
finding it. What's that?
I said that's really interesting to me, because it's super personal with his description and whatever. But it's so early war to me when one man dies and it becomes this very florid kind of story in the newspaper about his death and his qualities as a person and this and that and his brother and this. By 1864, these guys are, they're just putting numbers in the newspaper. So it's a different dynamic for someone who dies at that point, and they're viewed much more as a martyr. And again, we just mentioned that the early war volunteer, rather than a later war conscript or a bounty enlistee, something like that. So there's a totally different quality to how this guy's death was looked at. In May of 1864 or 1862 than it would have been had he died literally in the same place, fighting the same generals 2 years later.
I'll fast forward your timeline. There's like I think there's another article I have that talks about Elmer Ogden, and it's a piece. I mean, it's pretty big. By the time the casualty lists for Fredericksburg hit the exact same newspaper, they're talking about an officer, and the list is just Company A, Company B, It's not. There's no more of this like highlighting the brave soldier. It's just like, oh, holy shit, there's more. There's more dead. Yep, more dead. Here you go. Here we go.
Yeah.
In May, they're still in that, we'll whip them by summertime. They're they don't know what they're doing. They're not prepared for what's about to happen.
Yeah,
then
sure.
You immediately have the 7 days, the fights around Richmond, the Northern Virginia campaign, or you have Second Manassas, Chantilly, and then of course you go right into the Antietam campaign. And I think by the time the Antietam campaign is over, the shock and the what's the word I'm looking for? The novelty of it is over. Yeah. And so by the time these casualty lists are coming out of Fredericksburg, same town, same people, same newspaper, they're just racking them off like it's nothing.
So Elmer doesn't survive. Obviously, we just discussed that. For anybody, he was shot, Battle of Williamsburg, May 1862, shot literally right there in the forehead with a rebel bullet. He's buried on the battlefield at Williams. And so for the rest of 1862, the other four, I'll keep my head right here, and then the other four, we can see them going around here because he's out of the game. What else? What's the rest of their 1862? Where's the 7th? Are they at Antietam? What happens to them at Fredericksburg? And I'll
go right where you're going, or lead you right where you're going. The 7th, after the Peninsula Campaign, they're going to fight tooth and nail. By the time they get back to Washington, their uniforms are in tatters. They're going to fight at Second Manassas. And then again, when the army is defeated there, they're going to fall back in the defenses of Washington. The 3rd Corps is going to stay in the defenses of Washington. And the 6th Corps, which the 1st New Jersey Brigade is going to be in, will go and fight at Crampton's Gap. And then when they fight at Crampton's Gap, they're going to stay there. So they're both going to miss, both New Jersey brigades are going to miss the Battle of Antietam. There's only one New Jersey regiment that will be engaged at Antietam, and that's the 13th New Jersey, who have been in the Army 2 weeks before. They had been in the Army 2 weeks before the Battle of Antietam. They had never fired their muskets, and they had never performed battalion drill. So they get thrown in, and then they get hit by Lafayette McLaws. So yeah, go figure what happens to them. And I think Hexamar's battery is there. I know there's one New Jersey artillery battery that's present at Antietam. So they miss Antietam, and then they get lucky enough to almost entirely sit out Fredericksburg. Again, the 3rd Corps is held on the other side of the Rappahannock River, while the rest of the Union Army goes forward, fights at Slaughter Pen, fights through town, Murray's Heights. The 2nd New Jersey Brigade is going to go into, they're going to be one of the regiments or one of the brigades going into town as the rest of the Union Army is going out. And funny enough, the 6th, the 8th, and the 5th New Jersey are going to cross the bridge. As the last regiment is crossing the bridge, I think they're starting to destroy the bridge and pull it out, just letting it go down the river. The 7th New Jersey comes around the corner, in Fredericksburg, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" So the 7th New Jersey almost gets abandoned in Fredericksburg, even though they didn't fight there. They were there. They went through the town. And then they almost get left by the rest of the army. So they have to make their way across this breaking bridge and then escape back to the other side of the Rappahannock. Yeah.
Let me quickly touch on one thing real quick, because somebody just asked a question before we get any further along in the chronology here. He asked about Crampton's Gap. What is Crampton's Gap? He wasn't familiar with that. So Crampton's Gap is part of what's called the Battle of South Mountain, which is sort of the lead up to Antietam. Do you want to touch on what the New Jerseyans do at Crampton's Gap? Can you back up a little bit? It's not we're not talking about these guys in the 7th, but New Jersey at Crampton's Gap is certainly worth talking about.
Yeah,
and I know it's something that you Crampton's Gap is something you love as well. So for the benefit of the fellow who asked that question, you touch on that for a sec if you'd like.
So Crampton's Gap is part of a 3-prong attack at South Mountain: Fox's Gap, Crampton's Gap, and Turner's Gap. Crampton's Gap will be assaulted by units of the 6th Corps, including the 1st New Jersey Brigade, the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, and the recently paroled and returned to the Army 4th New Jersey. The 4th New Jersey had been captured at Gaines Mill 40 days before. They had lost their colors, their Springfield rifles, which had been personally purchased for them by Philip Kearny when he commanded the brigade. That's my 3rd Kearny reference tonight, by the way.
Well, we are talking New Jersey, so you got no limit on Kearny.
He's it. Him and Bruce Springsteen, man, they're it.
So
4th New Jersey will be returned to the Union Army days before Crampton's Gap. They're going to be kind of like the rest of the brigade's going to have their nose stuck up at them because you guys surrendered. You fell back. Oh shit, what's going on? You're the cowards. So they were given old smoothbore muskets and basically told you've got to fight for retribution. The 4th New Jersey is going to go in. The brigade is going to be in column of regiments, 2 and 2, one left and right, and then another one, 2 behind them. They're going to go in and start to wheel up Crampton's Gap, and the 4th New Jersey is just going to go for it. A man by one of the soldiers in the 4th New Jersey, a man by the name of Sergeant Jacob Osterman, is going to shout out, "Remember Kearny," who had been killed just days before. And the 4th New Jersey is going to break into a fire and veracity rarely seen by New Jerseyans, and that is a quote by Major Grubb of the 3rd New Jersey. So the 4th is just going to break out. They're going to take 700 prisoners, including all of their knapsacks and haversacks, which the 4th New Jersey didn't have any of those at all, so they get all new stuff. 700 Enfield and Springfield rifles, enough to refit the entire regiment, and they're going to capture an artillery piece and 3 regimental standards. And it's going to be, arguably, it's going to be the 1st New Jersey Brigade finest hour. I think it's a really cool fight. It's a small fight. It's not anything big or crazy, but it's there. You can go to South Mountain. The New Jersey Brigade has a tiny little humble monument right behind the news correspondence monument. I'm sorry, right in front of the news correspondence monument, which I don't know why they picked Crampton's Gap, but there is this massive castle-looking monument right in front of the New Jersey Brigade monument. In case you ever
I've always wondered about that too. Why the correspondence monument is there. So in a little bit slightly broader picture, South Mountain was, as in 1862, August and September, Confederate Army of Northern Virginia under Lee's moved into Maryland, and McClellan is coming with the Union Army up from Washington, D.C., and South Mountain is really the separating thing, and there's these 3 gaps, and the Army's trying to cross there, and there's a attempted Confederate defense, but it's really what sets the stage for the Battle of Antietam. So that's a little bit broader thing, and the fights there are intense. It's small in geography because of these features in South Mountain, but they're very intense fights. The Iron Brigade fights at one of the other gaps of those 3 as well.
And then go fight at Antietam 2 days later and lose 50% of their men again. Yeah.
So now we went back and got through that. So we talked about Fredericksburg and the 7th, just getting out of there as the bridge was being dismantled. So now we're looking at winter quarters, the Mud March, which we won't get too into that. And then we're going to talk Chancellorsville, which is May of 1863, unless you want to get it.
We're going to have to get bogged down in the mud for a little bit.
Okay, well, let's hear it then. So can we connect any of these remaining 4 of the 5 to the Mud March here?
Yes. So while well, the 7th is going to, they're going to, like the rest of the army is just going to try and move and then sludge back. It's not until February of 63 when the army is finally out of the area and able to get closer to DC that Joseph Burt, the guy to your, I'm trying to figure it out, the guy with the big beard sitting down.
Yeah, bottom left, this one.
Yes, that guy. He is going to pass away February 13th, 1863 of, as the official record is going to say, congestion of the heart, which is pretty much congestive heart failure. So he is the old man of the group. He's 34, just like me. 34. He's got to have been, he had just been campaigning with the army for a year. Old, like I said, much older, unlike the rest of the guys who were in their 20s. I think Lorenzo Painter, the guy with the other guy sitting that's left on the the other guy there sitting. Yeah, he, I believe, was like 19 at this time. So the difference between a 19-year-old and a 34-year-old being outside all the time and going through the rigors of the elements, the younger guys are able to bounce back. Joseph Burt, on the other hand, is going to pass away from congestion of the heart. He passes away and is back in Cedarville on February 15th. I believe it's February. Yeah, it's February 15th, and he's buried on the 18th.
And he's buried at the churchyard where
he's buried right across the street from my house. We're right across the street and down a couple properties, but yeah, I can see this.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
truly.
He's going to leave behind a wife and several children. In the Historical Society, we have a letter written from him in November of 1861, and it's a letter to his aunt, and it's a typical 19th century I'm being good, but everyone else is being bad letter. He literally writes while he's sitting in his tent. He's like, "Oh, we have a church meeting 4 times a week, very good attendance, but we always hear men on either side of us are cussing and playing cards and all sorts of wickedness." It's just like, yeah, well, your tent is being the good Cedarville, I'm sure. Yeah, it's funny.
So he doesn't make it, so we're down. I should. It's too bad I don't have a thing I could block them out as we go through the story here. So these two are gone. And those of you that are watching on Facebook that cannot see Dan and cannot see what I'm doing with my hands, we're actually live streaming on TikTok at the moment as well. And I have a green screen behind me with the image that you can see here on Facebook directly behind me. So when I'm pointing at different guys' faces. And so let me move here. Okay, so now we're down 2. So we've got three remaining. So if those are watching, if you start clockwise at the top, and then what do we got? Probably 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock. They are still with us, March of 1863. So let's talk Chancellorsville, because these guys, to me, New Jersey and the Chancellorsville Campaign, and of course Salem Church, which I think we'll touch on here.
New Jersey, the first.
For me, that's when I think of New Jersey in the Civil Wars. I think of Salem Church, maybe because the monuments are more substantial than monuments on a small battlefield like that. That they really stood out in my memory more so than a monument that was at a smaller monument and a small battlefield like that. So it's just kind of stuck in my brain a little bit, that connection between the two. The 7th was not at Salem Church. They were elsewhere.
That was the 1st New Jersey Brigade fight. That was the 1st, the 2nd, 3rd. The 4th was not there. The 15th was with the brigade at the time. And the 9-month regiment, the 23rd New Jersey, also known as the Yahoos, that was their big fight.
So where is the 2nd New Jersey Brigade at Chancellorsville? And tell us, lead us through that a little bit, if you can.
They're with Dan Sickles in the 3rd Corps. They're going to be, as everybody knows, they're going to be on the the name escapes me. What's that artillery plateau that everyone says that Sickles?
Oh, Hazel Grove.
Yeah, so they're he's they're with Sickles in the Hazel Grove, whatever. But their day comes. It's May 3rd. their big day comes, because everybody's like, oh, May 2nd, the big, flank attack, da 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 da. Yeah, that was a good, you got a good one on the old Union Army that day. But let me tell you about May 3rd. Let me tell you how the 2nd New Jersey Brigade came in and just wrecked some shit. So the 2nd New Jersey Brigade is going to be like in this weird rolling hill position, going left to right. The 7th New Jersey is going to be in an elevated position, and I believe it's the 8th New Jersey going to be on their right. And these Confederate brigades are just going to come wave after wave after wave. And the 7th is going to be able to swing in on the side when the Confederates get close, and just mow these Confederates down. They talk about how they're just every volley is just blowing these dudes away. Then when the Confederates fall back, men of the 7th will just like trot out and like pick up a Confederate flag and then walk back to the line. And then the 7th will like readjust itself back into its trap, wait for the next Confederate wave to come, shoot them to pieces, and then, send somebody out, go pick up the flag. I think they said they took 5, but they're credited with 3. Yeah, and it's the 7th New Jersey's finest hour.
And these 3 are 3 survivors, are all participants in that battle.
Yeah, they're all going to be there, and they're going to make it through the war. I hate to cut it short, but they're going to make it through the war. Benjamin Ogden is going to be the guy who really is the one who writes, who I think is the one corresponding a lot back and forth between home, and he's going to make very much a name for himself after the war.
So let's does he or any of the others offer any accounts from Chancellorsville, or is the information on that come from the regimental history?
Stops, like right at Bert's death. Everything I found is the last correspondence is Joseph Burt returns home, blah 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 blah.
Okay.
But I was able to find through census records and some other stuff what happened to everyone after the war. Joseph Diver is going to stay. Yeah, Joseph Diver is going to move to Salem, which is right up the road from us. He's actually going to be. He's the only non-New Jersey native in all of these in the group. He was born in Maryland, and then as a child he moves. His father is a Presbyterian minister, and then he is going to move to Cedarville with his family.
Are these guys? But just I hate to interrupt you again, but it just made me think, what's their connection together? Like, why are the 5 of them sitting for this photo? And you said there was a 6th that's really associated with the group that's not actually in this photo. Yeah. Other than just geography and them being from the same town, is there any relationships of marriage or cousins or anything like that unifies these guys?
Yeah, the 2 Ogdens are first cousins.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Joseph.
That would be him and him.
Yeah, and then somewhere along the line, Bert married. His wife is an Ogden, so I think that's how he knows, and is probably stringently related to the other 2 guys.
Okay.
Elmer and Benjamin Ogden, and then Joseph Diver and Lorenzo Painter must have just been friends. I haven't seen any of the last names cross records, so it's not like they were cousins or they were, they must have just been church friends or neighbors or, close enough for them to be listed together and then be in this photo.
Yeah. And they're similar age, right? They're both.
Yeah. All these guys except Bert are in their early 20s, I think. Okay. And I think the one guy on the right is the youngest.
Okay. So after Chancellorsville, that's their. As far as a military victory, that's their finest hour, like you said. What is do they have any more notable things that we want to touch on later in 63 or 64 with this particular group?
The 7th New Jersey has a weird fight at Gettysburg. Like the rest of the 2nd New Jersey Brigade, they are broken up and sent to all different parts of the battlefield. And then what else? Yeah, so they're at the wheat field, not the wheat field. They're right outside the peach orchard. They're protecting not Bigelow's battery, Clark's New Jersey battery, which holds the record for firing the most artillery rounds in a single engagement at about 1,300 rounds. They're going to be behind. Their monument's not that far from them. If you go to Gettysburg today, you'll see the large mini ball monument right by the Peach Orchard. That is to the 7th New Jersey. That is to their second position. I think it's their first or second position. I'm trying to think. No, it's their first position, because then they go from there. They start receiving artillery fire. They like hide in the swale, and then the brigade is called out, or the regiment's called back out when like Barksdale's Mississippians are coming through. And then they advance to Clark's battery, let them advance to Clark's battery, like fire like a single volley, and then just get out of town. They're going to lose their colonel there, a man by the name of Louis Francine. He'll be shot and he'll die a few days later in Philadelphia. And then the rest of them, the other 3 guys, make it out. Surprisingly, they make it through Gettysburg. I haven't been able to look at the pay record. The Union Army took a record of pay June 30th. So like you can tell who was present and who was at the Battle of Gettysburg by that record. I haven't been able to go to the National Archives and see any of that stuff because thanks COVID. So the rest of these 3 guys are going to see the rest of their service. They're going to muster out in the fall of 1864. They're going to see the wilderness. They're going to see Spotsylvania. And I know that the 2nd New Jersey Brigade it's one of those units, those 61, 62 units that just are so beat up by 64. They're kind of like kept in the rear. They get the, not only the special treatment or the veterans treatment, but they get that, like, hey, maybe you guys you'll be on the left. You go hang out over there. And then they return home and, leave the war behind them, kind of a thing.
Yeah. What do they do? What do these fellas do after the war? Have you done much research into their lives there around in town and their families and businesses, that sort of stuff? The guy with the real tall cap, the Joseph Diver, he will move to Salem, New Jersey, and work. I wasn't able to find any record on him of what he did. It was just head of household. Benjamin Ogden, the guy with the beard, he will become a oyster boat captain. He will have a schooner, which will be named after his daughter, the Alice Ogden, which was that information was recently shared with me from a member of our historical society. I didn't know that ever existed. Wow. One of the ladies that's there, she brought it up to me and was like, "Hey, here's this. I read your article and like knew this existed. And if I knew, I didn't know at the time that I was writing it and it got printed that, there was more information about this guy." Sure.
He's an oyster boat captain, and he's going to be successful. So much so that he's able to send his son to what is Penn Medical School today.
Wow.
Yeah, and just pay for his tuition. So good on him. Lorenzo Painter, the young man seating. He will stay in Cedarville. I think he's just going to be like a farmhand. I'm trying to remember. I don't have the paper that I should have brought with me that has everybody's information. Thought I had it memorized. But he's got an interesting backstory. So in the 1840s,
we're talking about this fellow here, by the way.
Yeah, seated there. There was a guy named Lorenzo Dow. He was a evangelical minister. He was like one of the most popular and one of the most physically seen people in the country. Because back then, like when Abe Lincoln ran for president, like he didn't make big city tours and like he had to see everybody, or anything like that. I think the only other most physically seen person in the world, like at that time, was Frederick Douglass.
Frederick Douglass, I was going to say.
So Lorenzo Dow in the 1840s is going to go all over the country. He's going to preach all these massive sermons, and he's going to come down here and he's going to give 2 sermons. One in Bridgeton, which is just up the